Data is a raw facts, figures and statistics, whereas information is a processed data. For example, if I am going to write 123, then it is a data. Input unit helps to give input data to the computer for processing purpose. Whatever the user will give with the help of input device, that can be called as input unit. Depending upon the CPU, which type of CPU, depending upon that only, will classify which type of computer it is. Welcome to one and all. Myself, Vasanta, lecturer in computer science, Vidhyaashram, Pre-University College, Temple of Excellence, myself. Today, we are going to start with the first chapter, that is the overview of computer. This is the first chapter in first PU syllabus. The total weightage of this chapter is 8 marks in the annual exam. In 8 marks, you are going to get one question in part A, one question in part B, as well as one question in part D. Whereas part A carries 1 marks, part B carries 2 marks, as well as part D carries 5 marks. Totally 8 marks weightage in the annual exam. On this session, you will come to know regarding the definition of computer, what are the characteristics of computers, difference between data as well as information, what do you mean by hardware, the functional components of a computer system. Regarding that, today you will come to know. First, we will study regarding what do you mean by computer, what are the major functionalities of computer, or which are the components of the computer. Regarding that, today you will come to know. Whereas computer is an electronic device, it is an electronics device, it takes the data from the user and it stores the data, process the data. After processing, it will generate the result to the user how the user wants. For example, some user want the information has to be displayed in table format. On that format, it will produce us. Some users wants the information has to be generated in paragraph format. On that pattern also it will generate. For example, some users wants the information has to be displayed in the format of graph. On that format also it will generate. It means that how the user want, on that way here it will generate the result. It is an electronic device. It takes the data from the user. First it receives the data from the user with the help of input devices and process the data. After processing, it will generate the result to the user. It is an automatic electronic machine that can store and process the data, process the data, and whichever way the user wants, on that way it will generate the result. Now, when we come on the characteristics of computer, there are several characteristics. The first one is speed, memory, storage, accuracy, automation, diligence, as well as cost effective. These are the major characteristics of computer. Already you come to know what do you mean by computer. It is an electronic storage device. It takes the data from the user, process that. After processing, it will generate the result. But when we come on characteristics, the first characteristic, speed. Then what do you mean by speed? Why it is so speed? Because it can process the data with a few milliseconds. The speed of execution is very fast here. Then memory, it stores both input data as well as output data. For future purpose, it has to store the data as well as information. That also it can able to perform. Then storage, it can store huge amount of data. It can store huge amount of data. The speed is very fast. Then the storage capacity is also more. Memory is nothing but storage here. It can store huge amount of data, and storage is also more. Memory is also more. Accuracy is nothing but here it will calculate all the instructions, all the data with accurate value. Then automation, diligence, it will not going to get tired. Continuously it can able to perform all the tasks. Then cost effective. These are the few characteristics of computer. Next we will discuss about what do you mean by data and information. Data is a raw facts, figures and statistics, whereas information is a processed data. For example, if I am going to write 123, then it is a data. Data is a raw facts, figures and statistics. For example, here in In 123, it will not give any specific meaning, whether it's a bus number, register number or phone number. If I am going to write register number equals 123, then it is a information. Data does not going to give any specific meaning, whereas information will going to give the specific meaning. Whereas data is a raw facts, figures and statistics, a raw material. Data is a raw material, whereas information is a processed data. For example, if I want to construct a building, for that building, whatever ingredients, whatever item I am taking, all those items can be called as data. Data means it's a raw facts, figures and statistics. Whereas when they come on information, it's a processed data can be called as information. The same example, building construction, the raw material we are going to consider as a data. After constructing the building, that building can be called as information. For example, if I want to prepare a sambar, for that sambar, whatever ingredients I am taking, all those ingredients can be called as data. After preparing sambar, that sambar can be called as information. And data having specific meaning, data does not have any specific meaning, whereas information having specific meaning. Whereas data is a collection of raw facts, figures and statistics, whereas information is a processed data which having some specific meaning. Next we'll discuss about what do you mean by hardware and software, because if you know the basic concept, what do you mean by hardware, software, hard copy, soft copy, then easily you can analyze that. Hardware is nothing but the physical component of the computer that we can touch and feel can be called as hardware. The physical components, for example, it may be keyboard, mouse, monitor, whatever components we can touch and feel, all those components can be called it as hardware. Hardware are the components that we can touch and feel. For example, me, I can touch and feel. Is it no? It means that I am the hardware component. Hardware is nothing but the physical component. For example, here you can touch and you can feel, but mentally what exactly I am thinking, is it possible to identify? No, it is not possible. It is a set of instructions, whereas set of instructions can be called as here software. Whereas hardware means touch and we can feel. Software means we cannot touch, but it will perform the particular task. It contains set of instructions. Whereas hardware refers to the parts of a computer that can only be seen and touched, including case and parts inside that. All those things you can touch and feel. The physical components, whichever components in the computer that we can touch and feel can be called as hardware, because usually they will ask the difference between hardware and software. Then software refers to instructions or a program. Instructions or a program that tells the hardware to what exactly it has to perform. For example, we can touch and feel hardware. The instruction inside that what exactly it is performing, that can be called as software. When we come on software, two types. One is system software and one more is application software. Now you come to know hardware, software, as well as what do you mean by data, as well as information. Data is a raw facts, figures and statistics. Information is a processed data. Whereas hardware, the physical component that we can touch and feel in the computer can be called as hardware. Software means set of instructions or programs which will perform the specific task. When we come on types, system software and one more is application software. Then system software consists of programs that controls or maintain the operations of the computer and its devices. It mainly controls or maintains the operations on the computer as well as with its devices, that can be called as system software. Then what do you mean by this application software? This application software is also a program. If you come on system software or application software, both are programs only, whereas system software will maintain the system, controls the system. Whereas application software consists of programs designed to make user more productivity and assist them with individual tasks. Application, to perform particular application, we are using this application software. Whereas system software is also a program, application software is also a program, but here mainly use it to perform system work, whereas here to do particular task only. Next, we'll discuss about the functional components of a computer. It's very, very important. Usually in the exam, you will get this question: explain the block diagram of computer briefly, or explain the components of the computer with neat block diagram. Like that, you may going to get the question. Whereas already you know that when you come on computer, which are the components? There will get input device, output device, as well as processor unit, memory unit. All those things you will get. Whereas it is based on the functionalities of the computer. Hardware components can be classified into 4 major units. The first one is input unit. Input unit helps to give input data to the computer for processing purpose. Whatever the user will give with the help of input device, that can be called as input unit. Then processing unit. Here it will perform all the calculations. Whereas this output unit is mainly used to get the result to the user with the help of output devices. Then the one more is memory unit. For storage purpose, it has to store both input data as well as output data for future purpose. Already I told you here input device as well as output device. With that, I told you regarding hardware and software. Then you come to know what do you mean by hardware as well as software. Then what do you mean by hard copy as well as soft copy? The hard copy, in this especially the data will be present in a sheet of paper. If the data is present in a sheet of paper, then it can be called as hard copy. Then what do you mean by this soft copy? In this soft copy, the result or data or instruction, everything will present inside the CPU, or I can say in the pen drive or in the floppy disk. Then it can be called as soft copy, or through the mail if I am going to send, then it can be called as soft copy. Consider you are attended one interview. On that interview, you have written everything regarding your biodata in a sheet of paper and you have submitted. That information in the data, if the data is present in a sheet of paper, then it can be called as hard copy. On the interview, if they said, send your soft copy, then through the help of mail or through WhatsApp or any other, on that if you send the data, then it can be called as soft copy. It means that in soft copy, by pressing some key, the data is appear. By pressing some key, the data will be disappear. That is soft copy. Whereas hardware, there is a difference between hardware, hard copy. Hardware and software means physical component. Software means set of instructions. Hard copy means here the instructions or data, everything is present in a sheet of paper, whereas soft copy, here by pressing some key the data is appear, by pressing some key the data will be disappear. Whereas now next we'll discuss about input unit. Whereas input units, we can able to give input data, and on this we can send the data to the computer for processing purpose. Next, if you observe this diagram, here you have input unit, output unit, storage unit as well as CPU. Under this CPU, you have control unit as well as arithmetic and logic unit. With that, you will get one more as register. Whereas input unit, then what do you mean by this input unit? Because in the exam, you will get explain the block diagram of computer. On that time, must and should you have to write the diagram. That diagram itself carries 1 mark. Then what do you mean by this input unit? Input unit or helps to give input data. Input data to the computer. For example, keyboard. Using this keyboard, I can able to send the data to the computer. Is it no? Then mouse. Mouse is also one of the input device. To that also I can able to give the command to the computer. OMR, that is optical mark reader, that is also one of the input device. OMR, OCR, that is also input device. Then monitor. Monitor acts both input as well as output device. With that, I can able to give the command to the computer as well as I can able to see the result on the monitor. It means that monitor acts both input device as well as output device. Whereas for example, for input devices, keyboard, mouse, monitor, OMR, MICR, all those you can give example for input device. Input device helps to give input data to the computer. It can able to give input data to the computer for processing purpose. The second one, here when they come on the second unit, there is storage unit. Under this storage unit, we have two units. One is primary memory and one more is secondary memory. Primary memory and one more is secondary memory. It stores both input data as well as output data. Output data is nothing but here information. It stores both data as well as information. Then you have one more component, that is CPU. On this CPU, you have control unit, arithmetic and logic unit, as well as one more is register. Whereas control unit, the name itself suggesting that control. It means that it will control the overall operation of the computer system. Whereas the next one, arithmetic and logic unit. This mainly perform all arithmetic operations like addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, more. All arithmetic operation as well as logical operations like and, or, not. All these operations are controlled by this arithmetic and logic unit. And one more we have under the CPU, that is register. Register is a high-speed memory. It is a high-speed memory and it stores intermediate data. It stores intermediate data. When they come on CPU, under that three components, one is control unit, arithmetic and logic unit, and one more is register. Controls the overall operation. It performs arithmetic and logic operations, whereas register is a high-speed memory. It stores intermediate data. In storage unit, already I told you, primary memory as well as secondary memory. Primary memory will store the recent data, whereas secondary memory stores the data permanently for future purpose. Then the last one is output unit. Whereas on this output unit, from that computer, whatever result it is processed, we can able to get, the user can able to get the result by using this output devices. For example, monitor is an output device. Monitor acts both input as well as output device. Printer, speaker, plotters. These are the example for output device. Just analyze this. Can you give which device converts hard copy to soft copy? Just give the example where the device which converts hard copy to soft copy. Which is that device? Under input devices, under that we have scanner. Scanner will convert the hard copy to soft copy. Scanner is also one of the input device. Then which device converts soft copy to hard copy? That is printer. Printer as well as plotter. This will convert the soft copy to hard copy. Now is it clear? These are the major functional components of the computer. See, input unit or input device is any hardware component that allow to you to enter data instruction into a computer. Through that we can able to give instructions. Widely used input devices like keyboard, mouse, scanner, like that. Then the central processing unit, that is CPU. CPU stands for central processing unit. Is a part of computer that carries out the instruction of a computer program. It is the unit that reads and executes program instruction, hence it is known as brain of the computer. Depending upon the CPU, which type of CPU, depending upon that only, we'll classify which type of computer it is. When they come on CPU, three components. One is arithmetic and logic unit, control unit, register. Arithmetic and logic unit will perform all arithmetic operation, logical operations, whereas control units will control the overall operations, whereas register is a high-speed memory. It is a high-speed memory. It stores intermediate data. Next, when they come on memory, under that primary memory and one more is secondary memory. In secondary memory, data will store permanently, whereas primary memory will store the recent data. And the last one is output unit. Output unit or output device is any hardware component that convey information to one or more peoples in the user understandable form. On whichever form the user wants, on that format, it will generate the result. Already I told you in the beginning. In the definition of computer, it is an electronic device. It takes the data from the user, processes it. After processing, it will generate the result how the user want. On that way, by using output devices, the results can be generated. Example, monitor, speakers, printer, plotters. These are the example for output devices. Next class, we will explain regarding what do you mean by hardware, software, the generation of computer, under that which are the types of generations you have, then which are the components, how it is working, then which are the older types of computer, the history of computers, and with that all the components, everything will explain in the next class. Thank you for all of you.